Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Rachel Shoemake, and I am a California State Certified Electrician. My comments today are about C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV systems. I'm in support of a threshold that's consistent with the existing contractor classification and regulatory framework, allowing incidental and supplemental work. At a certain size threshold, a battery energy storage system is so large that it cannot reasonably be considered incidental and supplemental to a solar PV system installation. At some size limit, it must be considered its own separate system. Personally, as a state certified electrician, I think a reasonable limit should be a maximum of 5 kilowatt hours, but at least staff is proposing a threshold based on existing code standards. I support moving forward with regulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. I'm Juan Perez. I'm a California State Certified Electrician. My comments today are about C46 only contractors installing energy storage with partial PV solar. This is not about trying to take jobs away from C46 solar contractors. Most C46 contractors already have a C10 contractor license or roofing license that allows them to install energy storage systems. This whole matter is based on CALSSA making outlandish and misleading claims in order to protect their 300 contractors that want to be able to expand into energy storage work without the proper licensing and without investing in additional safety training for their workers. Safety is key here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, all. My name is Georgina Halafia, and yes, I am a state certified electrician. I went through the process of doing what I needed to do to get this card from the state, and I think it's only fair that anybody installing anything in regards to an electrical system is required to have one of these. I agree with setting a kilowatt hour capacity threshold for energy storage. For energy storage work performed by C46 contractors and incidental and supplemental to solar projects. These systems are dangerous the larger they get. Both national and state codes and standards set installation and fire safety requirements based on battery capacity. At a certain size, it defies logic to consider an energy storage system to be incidental and supplemental work. Let's move forward with the regulations to clarify this issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Peter Seberg, and I'm a California State Certified Electrician for over 14 years. My comments today are solely about C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV solar. I wholly agree with setting a kilowatt hour capacity threshold for energy storage work performed by C46 contractors as incidental and supplemental to solar projects. These systems are more dangerous the larger they get. Both national and state codes and standards set installation and fire safety requirements based on battery capacity. At any size larger than the proposed 80 kilowatt hours defies logic to consider an energy storage system as incidental and supplemental to the solar system. Please, let's move forward with regulations to clarify this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good morning, Board. My name is Will Smith, and I've been in the electrical trade since 1999. I've been state certified since 2005. I've actually spoke here in front of you guys in 2019. My comments today are about the C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV solar. I think I'm just going to go off script. To be honest with you, I'm just standing here as a common man, and I use common sense on a daily basis, and my common sense has went well for me. And the reality is we live in a state where when you go to the barber or you go to a beautician, they're expected to be licensed by the state before they work on your hair. Now let's think about our most precious commodities being our homes, being what is inside of our homes, our property, as well as our children and our families. So in this instance here, we're going to allow people to place, ultimately these are generators, these photovoltaic panels on the roofs of these houses and install battery systems without being licensed. My common sense says there's something a little wrong there. So I hope you guys take this and think about this before you make your decision. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Stephen Booker. I am also a state certified electrician. My comments today are about C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with photovoltaic solar. I support limiting the size of battery energy storage systems that may be installed by C46 contractors as incidental and supplemental work to a solar project. While they can be paired with solar voltaic systems, energy storage systems pose a unique and heightened fire and life safety risk. If installed improperly, they can overheat, explode, burst into flames, leak hazardous chemicals and gases, or discharge intense blasts of electricity. Moreover, the level of risk posed by an energy storage system directly correlates with its storage capacity. For this reason, the Fire Code establishes various size thresholds above which additional installation safety measures are required. I think 80 kilowatt hours is on the high end of what should be allowed, but support having staff move forward to create certainty for the industry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Greetings, Board. My name is Jason Gumatautau. I'm a state-certified general electrician from the city of Oakland, and I'm going to speak about the C46 only contractors installing energy storage paired with PV. There was a comment made about not having enough certified electricians, and I'm going to just focus on that a bit. I'm one of over 200 certified electricians in the city of Oakland, and last I checked, C46 is they don't hire electricians like us. So I'm here to just hopefully ask you, or politely ask you to consider equity and opportunities in the city of Oakland and other cities in California with regard to C46. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brandon Carlson. I took a red-eye flight up here, and I'll take a red-eye flight home. So I'm from Southern California. I am a licensed C10 electrical contractor. I'm an E1, E2 ICC certified electrical inspector. I've written or assisted with the NREL, IREC, NEC 2020, energy storage for the residential code, worked with the fire code. I sit in codes and standards daily. I donate about 40 to 50 hours a month in volunteer time just in codes and standards on energy storage. I train local AHJs, the inspectors. I work with utilities for interconnection. I've been in the industry for about 25 years now. I'm here on behalf of the C46s because I think there's a lot of information in the staff report that is misleading or wrong. The expert witness that you guys utilized, Joe Borrigan, although he is qualified as far as an E2, he doesn't quite understand the difference between three-phase and single-phase with energy storage interconnection. I'd love to donate my time with staff to address some of the concerns in there, because some of the solutions that are being proposed, including the 80 kilowatt hour threshold, is problematic because that's capacity, not discharge rate. So if we're talking about safety issues with energy storage and who's licensed and who's not, both C46 and C10 in the eyes of the electrical code are qualified personnel under Article 100. They both studied the NEC to pass their tests. The NEC, Article 690, 705, and 706 deals directly with energy storage. C46 test talks about photovoltaic, interconnection, and energy storage. The C10 test does not. That doesn't mean they're not qualified, but both had the same training material to pass those examinations. My flight doesn't leave until like 6, so if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to donate my time and stay afterward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Derek Cole. I'm a state-certified electrical worker, and my comments today are about the C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV solar. I see no justification to expand the scope of the C46 license to further overlap with the C10 electrical scope. If the CLB were to amend the 46 license to expressly allow some installation of battery energy storage systems when paired with solar PV, limit base for the size of the battery storage system, then that would make more sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Martin Hertzfeld. I'm a licensed contractor. C46, C10, C7, D31, D56. I'm also an Interstate Renewable Energy Council Master Trainer Emeritus. There's 6 of us in the United States. I'm an underwriter's laboratory. PV systems, installer systems would also include energy storage along with photovoltaics. There's about 3 of those here. I'm an ICC certified residential inspector, so I specialize also in residential systems too as well. If you look at your packet in 810, it's not in compliance. It doesn't match the 706.2 definitions. So the word device should not be there. The word would be component. Components are part of systems. Also, I suggest that if you correlate the fire code, the International Fire Code, you'll see that it's 600 kilowatt hours. That's what I would suggest if you're going to go down that path. I strongly suggest not making any changes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
In other words, leaving the classification as it is. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Dustin Sable. I work for a contractor. My comments today are about the C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV solar. What I can't get under that logic, what's to prevent them from installing an HVAC system? I'll respect the staff's recommendation, but let's not lose sight that these are separate systems with separate.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Alex Landsberg. I'm Research and Advocacy Director for the San Francisco electrical construction industry. I'm here to support establishing regulations for the use of for C46 contractors on energy systems. I think one thing that's really been left out, at least I certainly didn't hear it while sitting outside, is that we're talking about really just a handful of contractors who have all the ability in the world to get a C10 license. Let's be clear about what this is. This is a play for a small, potentially shrinking sector to try to go into a whole nother sector of work that is beyond the scope. We keep hearing inspectors and we keep hearing C46 contractor advocates talking about the testing that C46 contractors are doing. That's not the point. The point are the qualifications of the workers actually doing the installation. If we take a look at the records from the CPUC, we take a look at who's actually doing this work, it's overwhelmingly C10 contractors. If we take a look at our state's high road workforce development plan, what do we see? We want to see upskilling. We don't want to throw a growing sector to an industry that doesn't train systematically, doesn't provide advancement opportunities, and has a huge academic literature talking about it being poor jobs. So allowing the C46 contractors to enter into this market in any way, frankly, is an abdication of the state's workforce development goals. It's an abdication of the state's push towards clean energy, and ultimately, I think it's a disservice to people who will be using this technology. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jedi Castro, and I'm an electrician. I've worked in the state of California with generation and storage, often over the last 15 years. And I'm standing up today to add my voice to those encouraging this board to limit C46 installation of energy storage and photovoltaic solar. As an electrician, the safety of the public must be my primary concern. I'm against the expansion of the C46 license primarily due to this concern. If the board decides to move forward with any expansion that allows C46 to do this work, instead of requiring the more rigorously trained C10 electrical contractors, then I support setting a very clear limit on those systems. 80 kilowatt hour, while in my mind very high, is at least a standard based on code. Finally, I'll agree with Board Member Simpson. We have heard this all before, and it is time to act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Carla Palmer. I work for an electrical contractor. I'm here today to talk about the C46 contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV solar. I do support the 80 kilowatt threshold as consistent with the existing contractor classification regulatory framework, allowing incidental and supplemental work. At a certain size threshold, though, a battery energy storage system is so large that it cannot reasonably be considered incidental and supplemental to a solar PV system installation. So at some point, the size limit, it must be considered its own separate system. Personally, I think that limit should be 1 to 5 kilowatt hours, but at least the staff here is proposing a threshold that's based on existing code standards, and I support moving forward with regulations in this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is William Minyard, and I work with a contractor. I'm also here to talk about C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV solar system. I personally disagree that there is any compelling justification to expand the scope of a C46 contractor license regulation for further overlap with the scope of a C10 electrical contractor's license. However, if the CSLB were to amend the C46 license to expressly allow some installation of battery energy storage systems when paired with PVC solar, a limit based on the size of the battery energy storage system would make more sense from a technical, safety, and economic and regulatory perspective. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Gretchen Newsom on behalf of IBW 569 in San Diego. And I share with you that I too am an appointed member to a California board. And like you, I take very seriously the impacts that policy and regulation reform have on all Californians. I believe that all of our considerations and decisions should weigh how it affects the quality of life with particular focus on high road standards for jobs and careers. The notion of putting in good work and earning for our families and communities affects all components in life, as is evidenced with the top concerns of voters being now crime, climate, and homelessness. When people have good jobs, they have good lives. So how does that affect your deliberations today? You have before you a decision that will impact the work outlook for thousands of electricians, as well as the safety and quality of life for the public. Will you take the high road and ensure that electrical work, including energy storage, construction, and installation, is performed by C10 contractors that employ a skilled and trained workforce of certified electricians? These are individual workers, not contractors, but workers that have achieved critical certifications and knowledge that protects the public from hazardous situations? Or will you open a chasm further to low-road jobs and abandon public safety by allowing C46 contractors, not workers, contractors, to perform electrical work using lower-paid, untrained, non-electricians, thus putting downward wage pressure on certified electricians? I ask for you to take these deliberations very seriously today. They will be impacting all future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ben Davis. I'm an associate with the California Solar and Storage Association. I was one of the primary authors for the sections of the fire code and the sections of the residential code that set the KWH limits. And I will stand by the comments from our council that 600 kilowatt hours is the appropriate threshold if you're going to set one, and 80 kilowatt hours would be detrimental to the market. I've been hearing comments about allowing C46s to install energy storage systems would abandon public safety and that these workers are untrained, and that could not be farther from the truth. But I just wanted to bring up one point that hasn't been said, which is that the knowledge and the skills and the code regulations needed to install an energy storage system that is less than 80 kilowatt hours is the same as the knowledge and the skills and the code regulations to install a system larger than 80 kilowatt hours. And that is why it is arbitrary. If you are looking for a number in the code for where the regulations change, That number is 600 kilowatt hours because at that point in time, you must conduct a hazard mitigation analysis and take action accordingly during the installation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Buck. I'm a certified electrician in the state of California. I'm here to talk about the energy storage for the C46 contractors paired with the PV solar. I believe you guys are probably going to try to move forward with this, and 80 kilowatt hours, we keep hearing that. I think that's too high. 40 would be better. But if the board wants to move this forward, I would support an 80 kilowatt hour at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Kyle Church. I'm an electrician. Been doing this for about 20 years now. I also work for a C10 contractor. My comments are about this same thing we're all talking about, C46 contractors. It seems that this is kind of a small group of about roughly 300 contractors who are looking for special treatment so that they can install battery energy storage systems without the proper contractor licenses and without the use of certified electricians. To put this in context, there's over 25,000 contractors that currently are fully licensed to install both solar and battery storage projects. And those 25 contractors are the contractors that install 94% of the solar and energy storage systems in this state. It doesn't make any sense for me, as a state certified electrician, to expand the scope of C46 contractor license at the expense of the 25,000 contractors and employees who hold the correct licenses. But if you're going to do this, then I would suggest sticking with the 80 kilowatt deal and kind of keeping it more to a residential type system, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Jesse Padilla. I am an electrician. My comments today are about the C46 only contractors installing energy storage when paired with PV solar. I oppose expanding the C46 license at all, but if that is the direction of the board intends to take, then I support setting a clear limit on the size of these systems. I think 80 kilowatt hours is too high, but at least it's based on actual building code standards. I support having the staff move this to regulations so that we can finally put this to bed. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next comment, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Janine Cotter. I'm a C46 qualifier, co-founder, president of a majority woman-owned solar and battery energy storage specialty contractor based in San Francisco. We've been in business since 2004. My husband did his first grid-tied battery backup system in 1981. Solar contractors have been doing this work for a long time. DIR electrician certification has told my workers that they are not qualified to sit for the exam because hours worked for solar and battery energy storage is solar work and can't be used to qualify a candidate to sit for the certified electrician exam. So my colleagues who do this work every day for years are not being allowed to sit for the exam. So the decision that you make today regarding a limit will bar them from being able to do that work. And this is years of training and experience. You'll see that I provided 3 handouts. One of those is the Office of the State Fire Marshal. So Board Member Love, you can take a look at that. It says that the maximum energy rating permitted by this section is 280 kilowatt hours. And that means that for a home, the most you can put is 280 kilowatt hours on a home. That's 40 in a closet, utility closet, 80 in another location, 80 in another location, and 80 in another location. That makes 280 if you add that up. This right here is a spec sheet for the solar power wall. It's a 13.5 kilowatt hour capacity unit. You'll see in the fire marshal's guide that each individual ESS unit
2
has
minutes.
to have a maximum energy rating of under 20 kilowatt hours. Everything that we do every day with a trained workforce has been safe.
Sorry.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes are up. Thank you.
Good morning, Board. My name is Bernie Kotlier. I'm with the California Labor Management Cooperation Committee. After months of expert research, UC Berkeley recommended that C46 contractors not do this energy storage work when paired with PV for many good reasons. We don't have time to account for all of them today. But one of the gentlemen who spoke earlier talked about code and exams as if these C46 contractors were well prepared and examined. This is misleading and very confusing because what they're talking about is the contractor's license, not the worker's training or the worker's certification. A previous commenter said their people were certified. They are not. They are not certified. They are not trained. There's nothing in the state that requires a C46 worker to be trained, to be tested, or to be certified. There's no way for a consumer or anybody hiring them to know how much training they have or whether they're capable of doing this work. They could be taking them off the lot at Home Depot. No one would know. There's no way to tell. So it's important that we understand what we're really talking about. And we also heard that there's not enough people to do this work. This is complete and total nonsense. There are roughly 26,000 C10 contractors already. There's only 346, as you know, who have only a C46 license, and you've also heard that they do between 3 and 6% of all the work based on an extensive study of CPUC and other state projects. We need to fix this. We need to have qualified people doing this work. Please don't be misled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Tom Enslow on behalf of the on behalf of the IBEW NECA Labor Management and Cooperation Committee. Couple points. One, no one is taking work away from C46 contractors. They can continue to install PV under this proposal. They'll continue to be able to install the vast majority, really, of the combined PV energy storage systems in the state. And 99% of all residential and small commercial paired systems are well below the kilowatt hour threshold that's being proposed. I'd like to address Board Member Love's question about why the 80 kilowatt hour standard. Where does that come from? And this comes from code, but it comes from, and the record reflects this, that the kilowatt hour capacity of a battery energy storage system directly correlates with its safety fire risk. The more capacity, the more energy it stores, the greater that risk. And the codes reflect this by increasing the installation and safety standards based on size. And we'll see this really starting at 1 kilowatt hour for residential systems once they have to do some initial location requirements, fire detection requirements, impact protection requirements. And then at for lithium-ion batteries at 20 kilowatt hour for a single system, there's a whole bunch of requirements that are needed. And then for the aggregate, if you have aggregate system in a place 40 kilowatt hours inside or 80 kilowatt hour outside, then you need to increase stuff for combustible storage distance requirements, clearance requirements, listing requirements, commissioning, decommission operation requirements, fire detection requirements, fire suppression requirements, maximum enclosure size. I mean, there's a whole long list.
Wrap up your comments, please.
Things.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
So I just wanted to let you know, this is where it's coming from.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wayne, board members, Eddie Bernacchi on behalf of the National Electrical Contractors Association. Always want to start and thank the board and staff for all the time they've put into this effort. I know it's been a long time. I am going to scrap what I plan to speak about today because I think we need to get back to why we are here. The authorization for C46 contractors to do battery energy storage was simple jurisdiction creep that this board allowed. The board allowed for questions by industry experts from the solar industry to be placed on their examination that related to battery energy storage years ago, 7, 8 years ago. And as that started to trickle out into the industry, inspectors started to have concerns with those contractors doing the installations. We came to the board, asked for clarification. We thought there was going to be an easy path. We even received a letter from the prior registrar saying that they couldn't do this work. And after 6 years, we are still here debating. And when we start talking about, coming to some sort of compromise, that was something that our industry believed we were going to do in earnest with the board at their request, 6 months ago. We believe that this is separate electrical work. We always have. The codes treat it as separate electrical work. It should be covered by the C10. But in the spirit of compromise, we worked with the board staff to allow for some sort of limit to be placed on the incidental and supplemental section for the C46 contractors so they could continue to do the preponderance of battery energy storage in the residential market and small commercial. We're not happy with the 80 kilowatt hour threshold. We think it should be 0. But we think we have to set something here. This jurisdiction creep could happen with any license classification. There's new and emerging technologies that one of the board members mentioned. We need to get ahead of this, maybe in all classifications. But if we sit in our hands and do nothing, this is going to be really difficult. So we urge the board to move forward with regulations today, and we support the staff recommendation.
2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Billy Hall. I'm representing Luminant in the solar industry. I've been doing solar for 8.5 years. I've installed batteries for that long. I've done it with safety as top priority, and I'll continue to do that as we continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Christopher Smith. I'm a C10 contractor, and I haven't always been a C10 contractor. I came into this industry about 10 years ago with the idea to work in green energy, microgrids, energy storage, EV charging stations, off-grid homes, net zero energy buildings, the whole works. I began doing just financing, engineering, project management, consulting, and because demand was so tremendous in this region of California, I decided that I was going to get into the installation side as well. So I needed to get a license so I could physically do this. Now, I looked at getting my C46 license because that would allow me to do most of the work that I would need to do that I had already been doing in the past without sans installation, if you will. But I decided that I should just get my C10 because if I get my C10, I can do not only all of that work, but everything outside of it as well, meaning maybe I could do the HVAC system as well as the EV, just the standalone EV infrastructure as well. So I realize this has become a really hot button contentious issue, but if you are to have a C46 license, you can just go ahead and get a C10 just like I did. It's not that difficult, and you should be getting these kind of studying and these kinds of accolades anyway if you want to be a true contractor who's getting all of the information that's necessary and making a real mark in the industry in terms of safety and knowledge and what have you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any final comments from the board? I just want to remind the board we're not asking for action on this particular legislative agenda item. We will be on the next one. So any other final comments from the board? All right, seeing none, we're now moving to the last item on the agenda item H2B, which provides review, discussion, and possible action by the board to initiate the rulemaking process pursuant to the Administrative Procedure Act to amend California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Sections 810, 832.10, and 832.46, relating to the scope of the C10 and C46 contractors' authority to perform work relating to battery energy storage systems. We're now on page 176 of your packet. This is the draft regulatory language that is consistent with the recommendation of the CSLB staff report in consultation with expert consultants that we discussed in the previous agenda item. As I stated prior to the last agenda item, any vote that the board takes today is not establishing new law or changing any license classification today. This agenda item is a request by the CSLB staff that the board authorize staff to take the first of a number of steps in a public participation process that is required by the Administrative Procedure Act. It is necessary to start this process if CSLB is going to add battery energy storage systems to its contractor license regulations. In a moment, I will read the staff recommendation, and then I will ask for a motion. The staff recommendation is as follows. Approve the proposed regulatory text for the California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Sections 810, 832.10, and 832.46. Authorize the registrar to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, making any non-substantive changes to the text and/or rulemaking package as needed throughout the process, and, if approved by the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business, Consumer Services, and Housing Agency, set the matter for a hearing if preferred or requested. If the CSLB and/or registrar does not receive any adverse comments during the 45-day comment period, authorize the registrar to adopt the proposed regulations at California Code of Regulations. Title 16, Section 810, 832.10, and 832.46, as filed with the Office of Administrative Law for public notice, and take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process, making any non-substantive changes to the text and or rulemaking package as needed throughout the process. I would ask for a motion at this time.
I'd like to make that motion to accept
Johnny
the staff.
Simpson made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Michael Mark.
Michael Mark. Okay. As we discussed earlier, we are limiting public comment to 2 minutes. At this time, I will now invite the public to comment. Please form a line at the side of the room, and thank you. And I just, proper or not, I want to make sure we don't want to duplicate what's been said. We've had almost 30 speakers before. Those are all in the record. So if it's the same type of comment, we already have it. I just want you to know that. So I thank you. Anything from the public?
Thank you again, Heather Minner, Legal Counsel for CALSA. So I'd like to say that this is the first time the public and the board has been seeing this draft regulatory language, and it is really appropriate here to refer this to the legislative committee. Out of nothing else, it would be a courtesy to extend to your vice chair, who has been very involved in this issue and is not here today. And it makes sense to do this because you don't want to go embark on the whole time-consuming and expensive process of beginning the rulemaking procedure without having the draft legislation go through your legislative committee and allow people to have a little more than 2 minutes to comment on it, which is what the legislative committee is there for. So I think this should be referred to the legislative committee before you act on it. I've talked about how this is harmful. There's no justification. You're cutting off a lot of business. Regardless, any draft language, wherever you set the limit, should allow solar contractors to repair the batteries they've already installed. This will allow them to fulfill their warranty obligations and be helpful for the consumers who contracted for that work. You should have a grandfather clause added. Also, the language should be amended to allow solar contractors to install batteries within the threshold to an existing solar system. It makes no sense for the board to say solar contractors are authorized to install solar energy systems that have batteries at the same time of a certain size, but the solar contractor somehow isn't authorized or isn't qualified to install the battery in a separate contract later on to an existing solar system. And this is incredibly important for public policy because we need more storage in the grid. The governor has declared a state of emergency because there's not enough storage in our electrical system right now. That is a state of emergency. And we need as many qualified people as we can to bring these systems on board. And you need to allow that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Janine Cotter again. I just wanted to talk a minute about workforce. Included in the 3 materials that I handed out is an op-ed that was done by Melissa Brewster, who runs our construction production, Pamela Kwan, who actually several years ago sat for the certified electrician exam and passed it. So she's our one employee that's certified as an electrician. And so in that op-ed, it pretty much tells you that the life path and the life story and the lived experience of these women that are now doing this work. So I just thought it'd be helpful to note that I'm the vice chair of the Workforce Investment Board in San Francisco. A 2015 awarded California Woman of the Year for my assembly district for Luminalt's commitment to workforce development and diversification. Our skilled workforce reflects the breadth and depth of California's beautiful diversity. In 2021, Luminalt pulled over 50% of the solar-paired battery energy storage permits in San Francisco. No other contractor comes close. That was done with individuals like Billy Hall, who has 8.5 years experience solely day in, day out doing solar-paired battery energy storage systems. To suggest that he does not have the qualifications to do the work that he does every day is an affront. And he did apply to sit for the exam and was told that his hours doing the work that the electrical contractors here have said is their work is not qualified, does not qualify him to sit for the exam. Now, if you disadvantage workers from being able to progress and do not allow them the pathway to be able to do this exam,
Please wrap it
you cut out people from being able to do their work and their career and their livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Brandon again. I wanted to provide some clarification on your comment regarding 80 kWh if it's too small for future electrification. Electrification's coming down the pipeline. We discussed it in the 2017 code, the 2020 NEC, 2023, and it's getting past us. We can't keep up. Housing is going that way, right? As the removal of gas comes into play, people are going to start needing larger and larger size solar electrical systems, but almost all solar electrical systems in the next decade are going to include energy storage. People like that comfort of having energy storage in case of a blackout and emergency, especially with fires in California. My personal energy storage system at my house is around 100 kWh. And that's because I have several structures and I have a well and I have a lot of farmers in the neighborhood that operate their gates for fire for first responders and stuff like that. I'm an exception, I understand that. But an electric vehicle being parked in the garage is much larger than 80 kWh. I just want the codes and the ideas that come out of this room to align, right? It's got to be based on technicals. It's got to be under an understanding more than just an assumption, a report put together, and then opinions. Leave the politics out of it. Let's look at what the codes actually say. Let's talk to fire, why they made the recommendations with UL, with SEAC, with all these codes and standards organizations, NEC, California Electrical. There's so many people that work in codes and standards, and I feel like they're absent from this room, and this is why I came up, is because we talk about this for years and come up with numbers, and everyone comes to a conclusion. We roll it out in standards, and then we hear some other group is like, hey, let's change it and go this way. Well, where'd that number come from? I don't know. We kind of put together what was an original draft of a first draft, and we kind of went over. So I just want you guys to consider that electrification is coming.
Thank you.
And don't set those low thresholds. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Eddie Bernanke again on behalf of the National Electrical Contractors Association. Just wanted a couple comments on moving this towards the regulatory process. I think it's important to note that through the regulatory process, changes can be made to whatever proposals are being floated and move forward. Another little brief history lesson, this board did solicit and contract with an independent counsel to provide a recommendation, which was the University of California, Berkeley. They recommended that this work should only be done by C10 contractors. The legislative committee asked that the industry get together and come forward with some sort of compromise for the regulatory process. I believe we worked in earnest to get there. We started out a 20 kilowatt hour provision that would cover all residential, which is kind of the average throughout the state. So we weren't shutting out those markets. We are supportive of the recommendation at 80 kilowatt hours. But the board did vote to support that zero tolerance for C46 is doing this work in July of last year. And because of some legal hookups and others, we came back to the table and tried to figure this out. And so we strongly encourage you to move this towards regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Enslow on behalf of the IBEW NECA Labor Management Cooperation Committee. 2 quick points. One, no one's is proposing to limit, future-sized EV or limit new EV technology. What this is about jurisdiction creep, which really all specialty contractors should be concerned about. We're talking about right now, 97% of all energy storage, PVs paired projects are being done by C10 contractors. They are installing this work, they will continue to install this work, and they are by far the vast majority of people who install this. Quick point on the regulatory process. All that's being asked of you today is to send this through the normal regulatory process. That then requires a 45-day public comment period in which board members can submit comments as well during that, as well as communicate with their staff. And then if there's any changes, it could be another 45-day comment period or a 15-day comment period, depending on how much that change is. And then it comes back to the board, and you can approve it, disapprove it, or recommend changes that then have to go back again for public comment. So that you're not making a decision on this proposal that this is going to get passed today. What you're saying is we've been doing this for 5 years. Let's start this regulatory process and let's end this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And thank everyone. Any other public comment? All right. Board members, any final comments from the board?
Thank you,
Board
Mr.
Member
Chair. This is a very complex thing that we've been trying to do for a long time, long before I came on this board. And before I make my vote, I want to make sure that I understand what I'm reading, what I'm hearing, and because I don't want to come back and regret what I've done, because it's important for both sides. Everybody has families. We do talk about our future generations. So I have a couple of questions. I don't know if they can be answered, but I need some clarification on a couple of things. It sounds like what we're getting ready, what staff has proposed, this recommendation to start the regulatory process. However, it sounds to me like changes can be made in that process during the 45-day period. My concern is the word, if you can clarify for me and give me a definition of what does it mean when it talks about making any non-substantive changes. What does that non-substantive mean? Does that mean you can't change the 80 kilowatt number? What does that mean?
I think the changes to any language, that if there's a vote on the language today as proposed in the packet, changes can be made to it that are non-substantive or substantive, and will go out for notice. It can be either one. Non-substantive is if we're not changing the core of what's being proposed. If it's a grammatical change or a typo or something like that, would be non-substantive. And then a substantive change would be changing something like the kilowatt hour amount.
Okay.
And either way, that can be done through the regulatory process.
Okay. And then my last question is, I heard a little bit about the legislative committee. Do we work with them at all, or is that a separate and to this?
So the original motion in March, we talked. The motion authorized staff to bring this back to a legislative committee, or if it was necessary, or bring it back to the board. And what occurred was the latter. So we did not bring it to the legislative committee, but the regulatory process can begin without involvement of the legislative committee. But we can. If there's changes through the regulatory process to the language, we would bring it back to the board and alert the board of those changes and seek approval of the board to change the proposal at that time.
Would we have to make a motion to go back to the legislative committee
Yes.
after the 45 days and all of that? So it can be done?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board comments, questions?
Through the chair,
Yes.
Michael Mark here. I also have sat on a lot of these meetings where there's a lot of back and forth. In my original vote, I do also think that the 80 kilowatt hours is a little high, but going back and forth, they've came to some sort of consensus. At least there's a recommendation where, and that was my question earlier about what's the average right now. If the average is 20 and 30, the C36 industry is not getting cut out of this at all. There's still going to be work within that scope for BES systems. It's when it's larger systems, that's what it seems like to me. So in my opinion, I think that's why I second the motion. Was we've had a lot of discussion, conversations back and forth. It's about time that at least us as a board make a decision on this. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else from the board?
I'll make a comment.
Susan?
I wasn't sure I was going to, but I've been on the board longer than anyone. I may not be the oldest, but I'm feeling it today. However, we have, over the last 6 years, listened to the impassioned speeches from both sides, and it was very important to hear all of that. And I think 6 years ago, the technology was even different. The kilowatt per hour was very different. So our ability to stay on top of and in a fair way to establish what the regulations should be with consumer protection in mind, that we haven't been able to do this because technology is changing rapidly. People are very impassioned about their work. And so very few board members here are qualified to evaluate the kilowatt hours, the fire codes, the comparisons. And in a way, it was time, and when this was proposed to put it into regulatory rulemaking, it was a great relief for me because we have listened to this for quite a long time. It's a very important decision to make. But to have it taken on, making the staff working with regulatory rulemaking is very important at this time because they can do it the appropriate way that is recommended for many other industries, as I learned. And that also, today we are not changing any rules or classifications or laws, but that we are recommending and I use the word baseline, and it's probably not appropriate in that language, but we are recommending a baseline, but that baseline will be reviewed by both sides in a government, in a regulatory rulemaking, very formal fashion, because it's very hard for us to determine what is right, what the cap is at this time. It is a very technical issue that impacts industries and consumers, and my vote would be to support the staff recommendation and move it into regulatory rulemaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? We have a motion and a second. Mariah, will you call the roll, please?
Susan Granzella. Aye. Frank Altamura.
No.
Rodney Cobos, approved absence. David De La Torre, approved absence. Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Alan Guy.
Aye.
Diana Love. Aye. Michael Mark.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Mary Tykert, approved absence. Motion passes.
Thank you for your excellent guidance in that, Mr. Ruane. My agenda says, Susan, you may want to make a comment here regarding your tenure as board chair. Today is my last day, my last meeting, and it's been a pleasure to serve with everyone on the board, and also the importance of working closely with staff. It's been quite a journey, but looking forward to being a regular member and working with Mary and Diana and Mark and Michael in the future. So thank you very much. And this concludes our board business for today. Can I please get a motion to adjourn the board meeting?
Second.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.